Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Welcome to this year Vasa course, the comprehensive course on Buddhism. And with us, our dear Pankajji there. Pankajji has joined in from
Yes, Bhante, I'm here.
Denver, Colorado, USA. And Pankajji will be monitoring and doing the leading the sessions and inviting the Bhantes for the inaugural and first session. So we will now start the session with the lighting of lamp. So first of all, I pay my homage to the Triple Gem, homage to the Bada Bhanteji, Most Venerable Dr. Acharya Buddharakkhita Bhanteji, homage at the holy feet of Kassapa Bhanteji, our chief and abbot, and homage to the Holy Sangha, blessings to Samneras and Anagarikas, and metta to all the Upasakas and Upasikas. A very happy Asala Purnima to all of you at the auspicious full moon day of July, which commemorates the delivery of the Buddha's first sermon called the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. And this day, which marks the starting of the Vassa period, and we have all gathered here to celebrate this important occasion of commemorating the first discourse of the Buddha. And on this day, we are launching this Vassa course. This is the second course of the year. Last year, we had the fundamentals of the Buddha Dhamma. So before we launch the course, I request Venerable Panyaloka Bhante to light off the candles. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Padite na dipena tamadhansena tilokadipa sambuddhang pujayami tamonudang ghanasara paditena dipena tamadhansena tilokadipa sambuddhang pujayami tamonudang ghanasara paditena dipena tamadhansena tilokadipa sambuddhang pujayami tamonudam. Sadhu, sadhu. Having offered this lamp to the light of the Triloka, to this light of the universe, the supremely enlightened one, who have lightened up our lives with the teachings of the Dhamma. So now we will have the introduction. I will request now dear Upasaka Pankajji to take the program forward.
Thank you very much, Bhante. Bhante, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Bhante, thank you very much. Welcome all to the comprehensive course on Buddhism. And after the lightning ceremony, I just wanted to go introduce Bhante, Bada Bhante Acharya Buddha Rakhita and the start of the program. So, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. This year is the birth centenary year of Most Venerable Dr. Acharya Buddha Rakhita, the founder of the Mahabodhi Society, Bengaluru. He tendered yeoman service to humanity for 57 years and was the most erudite Buddhist scholar. He cherished the dream and vision to provide systematic Buddhist education as widely as possible. He was a member of the editorial board of the 6th Buddhist Synod, Kata Sanghayana in Yangon, which brought out the complete edition of the Pali Tipitaka. He was teaching Pali and Tipitaka at Nalanda University. He has conducted many Dhamma and Pali courses, meditation courses, and written numerous books and translation of Buddhist texts. He has taught and trained several disciples who are living and teaching in the Mahabodhi monasteries in different parts of the world. Homage to Most Venerable Acharya Buddha Rakhita.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay. Mahabodhi Society was founded in 1956 by Bhante Buddha Rakhita. And the object of the society is to put into the practice and teach the most sacred and pragmatic teachings of Lord Buddha. Since its very inception, the society has been actively engaged in various spiritual and humanitarian services. In keeping with the vision of the Venerable Dr. Acharya Buddha Rakhita, today the society has expanded its activities in different parts of India and abroad, with the message of compassion and unconditional love. Even in the physical absence of the most venerable Acharya Buddha Rakhita Bhanteji, Bada Bhanteji is fondly known as, is the dynamic force behind all the welfare services of the society. Through what he lived, practiced, taught, and gave example, the society has established monasteries for monks and nuns, meditation centers, hospitals, old age homes, educational institutions, and published over 300 Dhamma books benefiting thousands of people around the globe. Mahabodhi Research Center, Bengaluru, is the research and teaching wing of Mahabodhi Society and offers many certification, degree, and PhD work in Buddhism. This course is also conducted by Mahabodhi Research Center, Bengaluru, under the guidance by Bhante Ananda, Bhante Buddhadatta, and all monks at Mahabodhi. This course is a comprehensive course involving theory and practice of Buddhism and experiencing results here and now. We'll be playing a short video of the Mahabodhi's inception, about a 3-minute video.
And activities, yeah.
Yes, Bhante. So let me just start that.
From a small desolate garbage land to a graceful Buddhist temple, from one monk to tens to hundreds to thousands and counting, and from one center to 14 centers in different parts of India and about 6 centers abroad. Mahabodhi Society was founded in 1956 by the most venerable Acharya Buddharakkhita, a visionary, enlightened, determined monk who was a prolific writer, meditator, and an embodiment of love and compassion. Mahabodhi Society Bengaluru, a non-profit organization, aims to promote activities that renaissance ethics, morality, and compassion in individual, family, society, and the world. Being one of the biggest Buddhist organizations, no effort is spared to transform the temple into an actual sanctuary, facilitating Dhamma teachings, meditation courses, camps for children, character building education, hospital dana service programs, translating the Tripitaka, the original teachings of the Buddha, in all major languages of India, printing and distributing thousands of Dhamma books around the world, promoting diploma, certificate and PhD courses in Buddhist studies, Buddhist events, monastic ceremonies, and various other humanitarian programs for the underprivileged. Mahabodhi today is providing monastic education to nearly 450 monks, 27 nuns, character building education to nearly 1,600 students at the Mahabodhi schools, out of which 350 boys and 328 girls live at the Mahabodhi residential hostels. 15 elderly people happily live at the old age home in Tawang, Arunachal Pradesh. And the numbers are exponentially growing, keeping alive the living legacy of the Buddha.
May the grace of Lord Buddha surround your lives. May you all be enabled to live the path of metta, walk on the path of metta, live the life of metta. Nothing is greater than metta, universal love, the peaceful path of goodwill and amity. May you all be happy.
Thank you very much, Bhante. So our teacher today is Bhante Anand, who is serving as a General Secretary for Mahabodhi Society. And he has been active with Mahabodhi since his ordination. And would be our teacher for the class in today's session. Bhante has traveled across the world as well, has visited USA, and has been very kind and compassionate to work with the services of Mahabodhi Society and in the expansion of the Dhamma across the globe. And his role as a General Secretary for Mahabodhi is really guiding those centers to grow across across the globe. He is also planning to start a center in USA, which is what we are working on right now. So Bhante has a lot of experience in serving Dhamma and teaching Dhamma, and we are fortunate to have his services today to start the course. So with that, I request Bhante Anand to please go ahead and start the course today.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami. Homage to the triple gem, the supremely enlightened Buddha, the noble Dhamma and the holy Sangha. Homage to our most respected Bada Bhante Ji, most venerable Acharya Buddha Rakita Mahathera. Homage at the holy feet of our abbot, most venerable Kassapa Bhante Ji, Kassapa Mahathera. Homage to all the Sangha, and lot of metta to all of you, my dear Upasakas and Upasikas, and very hearty welcome to today's Dhamma program, course on comprehensive course on Buddhism, this online Vasa course. So this comprehensive covers the very, very vital topics of Dhamma, and we are going to study, learn, and practice them. Today it is the full moon day, and the very heart of Buddhism was taught by the supremely enlightened Buddha on this day, what we call modern Sarnath. In those days, it was called Isipatana Migadaya. Isipatana means where the rishis, the sages and seers, they landed, landing place. In this Isipatana, because the Pacceka Buddhas and other meditators by flying, and they used to land in this Vana, and from there they used to go for Tapata in this Varanasi, Kasi city. So that's why that place is called Isipatana. In that grove, the Supreme Buddha gave this teaching, and it is also called Migadaya, Deer's Park. Deer's Park because that was deer sanctuary, actually, not just park, it was sanctuary. In that entire area, nobody was allowed to hunt or kill any deers. Just like what we have got nowadays in national parks, sanctuaries for wild animals. Like that, in those days, they had this. Now, this sutta is given in this holy place. Another important aspect we have to keep in mind from the life of the Buddha. Today, though the sutta speaks about Four Noble Truths, I will be emphasizing on other aspects, because during the course of time, you will be hearing a lot of about the Four Noble Truths in many different ways and many explanations. This sutta has many aspects, very interesting aspects. Why the Buddhas teach in years? So that is another very holy place. And the fourth spot is Sankissa. Now, Sankissa is in Uttar Pradesh. That is the place where all the Samyak Sambuddhas, after teaching Abhidhamma, they land there, and the entire population is able to see the Supremely Enlightened One, and they pay homage. So these four spots are Avijitatthana places. So in this place, the Buddha enunciated the Dhammacakka Pavatana Sutta, the very quintessence, the very heart, the core of the Buddha's teachings are enumerated here. Now, as you see the nature of the Buddha, we will take it up tomorrow morning. The nature of the Buddha, the Buddhahood and other aspects which are equally important to know. But in today's talk, as I said, I'm going to explain about different subtle aspects contained in this Dhammacakka Sutta. As the Buddha addresses these Panchavagya bhikkhus, the Panchavagya bhikkhus were serving Bodhisattva Siddhartha when he was practicing austerity, that is self-torture. You see, that is one of the beliefs, that if you torture the body, mind will become purified. So our Supreme Buddha, before enlightenment as Bodhisattva, did that for 6 years. Dukkacharya, it is called. 6 years of all kinds of penances and self-mortification, to the extent that he collapsed one day. He became so weak. And that was a very fortunate place, we can say, that where he fell down, that was the place where these goats used to pass through. The big herds, goat herds, used to pass through that. And when he was just lying unconscious, a big herd of goats came, and one of the mother goats, she felt very naturally a very motherly love on this Bodhisattva, and she went and just stood there, not allowing other goats to step on unconscious Bodhisattva. And then she placed herself in such a way that the tip of the teats were just on the mouth of Bodhisattva, and she poured milk. And when she started giving milk, Bodhisattva started drinking it, and he gained consciousness and he felt strong. And he sat under a tree and he contemplated what all happened. How much of torture that can be given to any body, any physical body, any human being, all that I have given, but no enlightenment. What was the result? Only exhaustion and tiredness, weakness. And when he got this nutrition, he felt good. So he thought there must be another way. I have to change my course of action. There must be another way. So then he started eating and regained his health. And that is how when he regained his health, and these 5 monks who were serving him, expecting that he will become enlightened one day, and they wanted to hear the Dhamma. But when they saw that Bodhisattva started consuming food, they thought, oh, when he was torturing the body, even then he didn't get enlightenment. How can he get enlightenment by this luxurious life of indulgence? So we have no hope with him. Let us leave him. So that's how they left and went towards Sarnath. They were earlier living near Buddha Gaya, what we call Buddha Gaya now. It is Uruvela. It was Uruvela at that time. So that is how they parted. And then the Bodhisattva Siddhartha, he did his, he regained his health, and then on Vaishaka Purnima day, he became enlightened. So the nature of enlightenment, we will discuss tomorrow. And after the enlightenment, he spent 7 weeks under the Bodhi tree 1 week, and in the precincts of Bodhi tree for next 6 weeks. Like that, 7 weeks he spent. And after that, he remembers. You see, after 7 weeks of experiencing Nibbanic bliss and all the ultimate truths, he thought, after 49 days, he took his first food. For 49 days, no food, no water, nothing. He remained. Now, Tapasu and Bhallika, who were merchants, they came and offered the first dana. And after eating that, then he was requested by Brahma Sahampati Deva. That is another norm of all the Buddhas. The Buddhas will not just get up and start going and teaching. Somebody has to request. So Brahma Sahampati Deva came and requested the Supreme Buddha, "Oh Lord, please enunciate the Dhamma to the world. There are beings with little dust in their eyes. If it is cleaned up, they can see the truth. So kindly give the teachings." So after the request, Lord Buddha contemplated to whom I should teach. And he remembered his earlier teachers like Alara Kalama. He had died 1 week earlier. He remembered Uddaka Ramaputta. He had died just previous night. So he felt, oh, they have missed. Then who else is worthy of receiving? Then he saw these 5 ascetics, 5 monks who served him earlier with the hope of listening to the Dhamma. So the Buddha felt they are the right ones. They had served him out of gratitude, and also they were matured enough. So he mentally saw, he searched, and he saw that they are living near Varanasi in Sarnath. So our Supreme Buddha, out of compassion, he goes there. He walks to this Isipatana deer park near Sarnath, near Varanasi in Sarnath, the present day Sarnath. So there, these 5 monks were hesitant to welcome. When they saw that Lord Buddha was coming, they spoke among themselves, "Oh, Gautama is coming, Samana Gautama is coming, one who has left the path and become indulgent. Let us not give him the same respect like we gave him earlier. We will keep one seat ready. If he wishes, let him sit. Otherwise, it is up to him." So they they just were waiting, and as the Buddha he came nearer and nearer, just the glory of the supremely enlightened Buddha, they could not resist. One person went and cleaned up and made this seat ready, and another person brought water, another person brought a piece of cloth, and they welcomed, they washed the feet of the Buddha, and they made him to sit in this seat. But still, they were not completely surrendered to the Buddha. They still addressed the Buddha as friend. The Buddha said, don't address me as friend. Now I am enlightened Buddha. So after a few times, then they got this faith, and then they said, okay, we will listen. So there the Buddha addresses, oh bhikkhus, two extremes have to be avoided, given up. I was telling you about the extreme of self-mortification, extreme of torturing the body. Basically, that is the belief that by torturing the body, you will purify the mind. You will gain understanding. It is the mind which is to be trained, to be developed. The body is just a tool to hold the mind. So you can't purify the mind by torturing the body. So in this sutta, the Supreme Buddha tells that two extremes have to be avoided. One is self-torture, and the other is self-indulgence. Both are extremes. You see, for 29 years before the Supreme Buddha, the great Bodhisattva renounced his household life at the age of 29. For that 29 years, he was totally in indulgence, sense indulgence. What not he had. His father, when he heard at the time of his birth, Siddhartha's birth, that he may renounce household life, his father Shuddhodana Raja, he tried to keep him engaged in all kinds of sense pleasures so that he forgets renunciation and spiritual aspects. So that's why he was totally indulging in sense. He was allowed to indulge in sense pleasures. So since Prince Siddhartha had gone through that, and after that 6 years of self-torture, he saw both are extremes. You see, people believe, no? What they believe? What is happiness? People believe sense pleasure is happiness. And then they try to engage into that. Sense pleasure is pleasurable sensation. From sense comes sensation. It is pleasure. It is not happiness. Happiness is quite different. Somebody may be sitting in nice sofa. It is very pleasurable. But maybe in a big mess of tensions and worries. Can you call that person a happy person? No, but he has pleasure. Maybe he or she has nice eatables to eat, nice sofa. Maybe that person is sitting in the beautiful, very scenic place, surrounded by beautiful sceneries. Everything is fine. These are sense pleasures. They can give pleasant feeling, but happiness is totally different. Somebody may be sitting under a tree, like our Supreme Buddha was once sitting under a tree on the leaves in the cold winter time, and one rich fellow comes and he tells, we are sleeping and sitting in such luxuries, and you are sitting on these leaves, dry leaves. Do you get sleep? Do you get rest? The Buddha said, I am always rested. I am always happy. So you can see the difference between sense pleasure and happiness. People mistake sense pleasure to be happiness, and then they run after sense pleasures, thinking that is happiness. And in the course, they miss happiness. So if that is done, then that is one extreme, because you are not going towards real happiness and freedom. You are going into bondages. You are going into more and more complications. That is not freedom. Don't depend on sense pleasures for your happiness. Yes, when it is there, it is there. It is as natural as pain. Pain and pleasure both are sensory experience. So keep them at that level. Understand them that they are sensations. So the Buddha says he tried both. So now he says, oh monks, two extremes have to be avoided. One is the extreme of indulgence in sensuality, thinking that will bring you happiness, that will make you more meaningful, more purposeful life. And then when he left it and he went to the other extreme of torturing the body, because people said sense pleasure is bad, sense pleasure has to be given up. And in that, instead of that, one has to torture the body, torture the body, torture the body, so that mind becomes pure or soul becomes pure, or one gets liberation. So Bodhisattva did that also, to the extent of almost dying. 6 years, all sorts of tortures, but no enlightenment. So that's why he says these are two extremes. If you see in this word, people are swinging from one extreme to the other. In this dichotomous word, only extremes are visible, and people are running after these extremes. So what is the solution? The Buddha says, Majjhima Patipada, the middle path. And what is this middle path? The Noble Eightfold Path. Sila, Samadhi, Panya. You know, the right understanding, right thought. They are Panya. Right speech, right action, right livelihood, Shila. And right concentration, Samadhi, mental development. So now this Shila, Samadhi, Panya, or the Noble Eightfold Path is the middle path. Middle path in the sense it goes beyond. Not that you take little bit from self-torture, you take little bit from sense pleasure, make some kind of khichdi, and that is middle path. No. You go beyond, higher. You are independent. Your mind is independent of sense pleasures. Sense pleasures will not rule your mind. They will not control your happiness and freedom, your wisdom and enlightenment. This torturing the body is also another sense, not pleasure, but sense pain. So neither that is going to control you, whether it is sense pleasure or it is sense pain. Both will not control your mind, manipulate your mind, disturb your mind. That means you go beyond. So that is the way. When pleasures come, fine. When pains come, fine. Sickness will come, pain will come. You don't need to go and inflict more. Already enough of that pain is coming. Use those very pains, use those very pleasures with wisdom. That is middle path. How this, all the experiences that we make, they can become the causes and conditions for our insights to open. And what are these insights? Jnana. So here in this sutta, the Buddha says very, very important words. He says, Ayameva Riyo Attangiko Maggo. This alone, this eightfold path is the middle path. Sayati Idang, namely Sammaditi, Samma Sankappa, that is right understanding, right thought and this thing. Ayankosa Bhikkave Majjhima Patipada. This, monks, is the middle path. Tathagatena Abhisambuddha. Discovered by the Tathagata, truth bearer. Tathagata, the truth bearer. One who upholds the truth. That is the meaning of Tathagata. Chakhu Karani means that which produces vision. Chakhu means eyes, chakshu. With eyes, what do? We see the word, visual word. We see, please try to connect this. Mentally, you see the truths. Mentally, you experience the truth. So the mental eye, wisdom eye is opened by this middle path. Jnana Karani, you see, it brings knowledge. What kind of knowledge? Oh, this wonderful jnanas, vipassana jnanas, 16 vipassana jnanas. All that jnana means knowledge. Here jnana is not just intellectual knowledge, but your own experiential knowledge, one after the other. And this Noble Eightfold Path, middle path, it leads to Upasamaya. Upasama means peace, absolute state of peace. Worldly peace and Nibbanic peace, both. Abhinyaya. Abhinya is direct knowledge. There are different mental abilities, very special abilities, capacities, faculties. So this direct knowledge to these higher mental factors. Sambodhaya, this leads to Sambodhi, enlightenment. Full enlightenment, Sampurna Bodhi, Sambodhi. Nibbana, and it leads to Nibbana, the end of all sufferings, end of all complications, involvements. So you see, that is the state where this Noble Eightfold Path leads. All the worldly goodness, are all covered under this, like good health, long life, and wealth, material wealth, and comforts, and the good relationships, and good family, all kinds of. Uh, so, um, all the worldly gains, don't worry about that. Once you start walking on the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, they are already there. They are the natural byproducts. It is just like when you have to climb 20 steps to reach your first floor, you take all the 20 steps and reach the first floor. So when you reach first floor, means all the 20 steps are taken. It is not that you have to struggle and catch hold of one step and be stuck there only. No. Like that, when this Noble Eightfold Path leads to full enlightenment, all the goodness of our daily lives, which a common person aspires, they're all covered. What a wonderful path the Supreme Buddha has given. Just imagine. So this is how the Buddha emphasizes the middle path, avoiding all extremes. Here in this sutta, he explains the fundamentals about sense pleasure and sense pain. And if you run after those things, so they cover all extremes. In life, you just analyze with any aspect of any extreme, it is covered within that. Then the Supreme Buddha analyzes the Four Noble Truths into three very distinct aspects. The details of the Four Noble Truths, as I said, you will be hearing in the course many times in different ways. But what I want to emphasize is these three different aspects. The first is Satchanyana. The second is Kichanyana. And the third is Kathanyana. Satchanyana means to know exactly that this is the truth. The four truths are there, no? This is the truth of suffering. This is the truth of the cause of suffering. This is the truth of end of suffering. And this is the truth of the path that leads to the end of suffering. Now these four truths, to know them, to know these very truths is Satcha Jnana. But that Satcha Jnana, now you will also be knowing, oh, what is suffering? Pain is suffering, crying is suffering, sadness is suffering, missing somebody beloved is suffering, all these things. You will also be knowing to a certain extent, but not deeply. The cause of suffering, oh, we forget. How many times you are aware about ignorance? How many times you are aware of craving? Most of the times not. And the path, that also partly we are practicing, partly we are forgetting. That is how we are developing slowly, slowly. End of suffering, Nibbana. We end small sufferings in daily life, but that is not permanent end. But when we end all sufferings permanently, that is called Nibbanic state. Now these four truths, we know a little bit intellectually, little bit experientially, but not completely. But knowing them fully is one aspect, all the four. And then there is Kichanyana. With each truth, there is a function that you are asked to do. If you don't perform that function, then it makes no difference. It will remain only intellectual knowledge, but you will not be liberated person. So what are these functions? The first noble truth, suffering, that has to be understood. That is the function. The second noble truth, the cause of suffering, that has to be removed, eradicated. That is the function. The third noble truth, nibbana, that has to be realized. And the fourth truth, Noble Eightfold Path, that has to be developed. You see, there are four distinct functions related to the four noble truths. First one is understanding. Second one is eradicating. Third, Nibbana, is realizing. And the fourth Noble Eightfold Path is developing. What a wonderful analysis the Buddha, and this is not intellectual analysis, it is his experience. This is what he did. So the Satchanyana, that means the four noble truths. What are the four noble truths? To understand them is first step. Next is what function you are going to perform regarding each noble truth. That is the second step. But that is not the end. If you say, oh, this cause of suffering has to be eradicated, I'm trying to eradicate, that will not fulfill your performance of that function. The third one, Kata Jnana. Kata means that which has been done. Mission accomplished. That is called Kata Jnana. The first noble truth that we have to understand, you understand, and you have understood completely. So that function is fulfilled. The second noble truth, the cause of suffering. You eradicate the causes, craving, ignorance, they are eradicated to the extent that you fulfill it, that you have totally eradicated. So that accomplishment. And the third truth is Nibbana, end of suffering. So you are developing to realize, and you have realized it fully. And the fourth one, Noble Eightfold Path, you are developing, and you have developed. See? What an excellent, unimaginable explanation. And these are all experiences of the Buddha. Four truths, what are they? Satchanyana, that is Satyanyana, knowing the four noble truths. Next is four functions regarding each one that you are practicing. And Kata Jnana, accomplishment. Then you are fulfilled. So 4, 4, 4. They make 12. So the Buddha, after explaining these 12 aspects of the truth, he says very important statement the Supreme Buddha makes. Yava kivangcha me bhikkhave imesu chatusu ariya satchesu evang ti parivattang dvadasakarang yatha bhutang jnana dasanang na suvisuddhang ahosi. As long as yava kivangcha me bhikkhave, as long as in me the Imesu Chatusu Arya Satchesu, in these four noble truths, Evang Tiparivattang, in these three ways, that is Satchanyana, Kichanyana, Katanyana, 3, all of them, Tiparivattang, in 3 modes, Dvadasakarang, totally making 12 ways, in 12 ways, Dvadasa Akara, in 12 ways. Yatha Bhutang Jnana Dasanang, Yatha Bhuta, as it is, not as one imagines, one presumes, perceives, or as something appears. No, but Yatha Bhutang, as it exists. So according to the truth, Jnana Dasanang na Suvisuddhanga avasi. Jnana is knowledge, Dasana is the seeing of that truth. Na Suvisuddhanga avasi, that it became, till that knowledge and vision did not become clear, insight and vision, they had not become absolutely suvisuddhang, absolutely perfect in accordance with reality. Our Badavante's translation is so beautiful. Because until my insight and vision of these four noble truths in 3 modes and 12 ways had become absolutely perfect and in accordance with reality, not till then, because did I make known to the word. Till these are understood, I did not make known to the word. What did he not make known to the word? And what is this kind of word? With its bhikkhus or holy men, devas, gods, Mara, Brahma, kings, commoners, people, to anybody he did not announce. What is that he did not announce? That I had discovered the summit state of supreme enlightenment. You see, the Buddha is telling this. I did not claim and announce that I am supremely enlightened till these 4 truths were totally in 3 modes, 12 ways, in all their different aspects were accomplished. Look at this. Then in the next passage he says, when in these 3 modes and 12 ways, all the 4 noble truths were totally, absolutely, perfectly understood according to reality, all these conditions the Buddha has put. I can also say, oh, I also know 4 noble truths. But this is according to reality, jnana dasana, with insight and vision, actually experiencing. Only then I announce to the world with its monks or holy people or devas or Mara gods or Brahma gods or the kings or common people, to let them be anybody. What did I announce? I had discovered the summit state of supreme enlightenment. So, please know, my dear Upasakas and Upasikas, these are not cock and bull stories. These are real experiences of our supremely enlightened Buddha. That's why we have come to the Buddha. Out of faith and out of understanding. We have gone through a lot of belief systems and views and ceremonies and rites and rituals. Anything that takes you out of the path of enlightenment is rite and ritual. It is nothing, no use. Rite and ritual means what? Some performance which has no real significance and benefit, but you still do it. Anything that you slip out of this noble eightfold path, remember what is rite and ritual. Anything that is out of noble eightfold path is rite and ritual. So, now another very important announcement that the Buddha makes in this sutta with regard to all the 12 aspects of the 4 noble truths Each time he says, for example, this is the noble truth of suffering. Idang dukkhang ariya satchang time bhikkave pubbe ananu sute su dhamme su. In this dhamma, in this truth, which has never been heard before. You see? What is this never heard before? Hitherto unknown. You see, that is the real experience of the noble truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, end of suffering, and path leading to the end of suffering. People were practicing. He searched so many people, so many gurus, so many places he went before becoming Buddha as Bodhisattva, but he was not able to achieve the summit state. Whatever they taught, they said that is the last, that is the final. But when he saw within himself, that was not the final. Unheard thing he discovered. The Four Noble Truths, the insight of Four Noble Truths, that is unique to the Samma Sambuddhas. That is the discovery. He did not tell that I discovered Shila, don't kill, don't steal, and these things. He tells about the Four Noble Truths. Of course, in the Noble Eightfold Path, even that is covered. But Four Noble Truths, as it should be understood to purify the mind. It purifies the mind. The more you understand the Four Truths, it purifies the mind. Next level, it purifies the mind. It makes you good person, then calm person, then wise person, and then liberated person. So that is why, since you are liberated, you become a noble person. That is why these Four Truths are called noble truths. The truths that are noble in such a way that they make you noble. There are millions of truths. Anything you can say. Something, if you say, oh, it is cold now. If it is cold now. That is also truth. But knowing that, have you become enlightened? No. So all things, the Buddha says, no, he knows so many things, like the number of leaves in the forest. And he was holding just fistful of leaves, and he was telling the monks, look, monks, there are just few leaves. I have taught only this much, but what I know is so much. Why did I not teach all those things? Because no need. This much is needed to make you a noble person, enlightened person. That's why. So these Four Noble Truths are the very crux of the matter, crux of our enlightenment process. So here the Buddha says, Ananusutesu, that which was unheard before. Pubbe ananusutesu. Pubbe, earlier, unheard. So it was not heard how to become enlightened, how to become transformed person. That is the Buddha's discovery. So the Four Noble Truths also means Paticca Samuppada, which we will discuss maybe in one of the talks. You will be hearing Paticca Samuppada. Paticca Samuppada is how dukkha is caused. Paticca Nirodha is how the dukkha is ended. So these Four Noble Truths explain Paticca Samuppada and Paticca Nirodha. And another important, I will just take few minutes. I'm going to close it now. Just few, 3-4 statements. Then the important, after understanding these 4 truths in 12 ways, so the Buddha also announces what he says, Jnanang cha paname dassanang udapadi. Indeed, the insight and vision arose in me. What is that insight and vision which told him from inside? It became very clear. Akuppa me cheto vimutti. Unshakable is my deliverance of the mind. Cheto vimukti, my deliverance is unshakable. It is not that you can convert it back into defiled mind, unliberated mind. It is now liberated, pure mind. It is one way, not going and coming back. Once transformed is transformed. That's all. Just like once you take ghee out of the milk by processes, making it like curd and butter and like that, you cannot turn that ghee into milk again. So in the same way, once you become Arya, then you will not become Anarya again. Once you become enlightened, you will not become unenlightened again. It is one way. Akuppa me cheto vimutti. Ayamantima jati nathidani punnabhavo. This is the last birth. There is no more rebirth for me. Now that vision also arose. So here you have to understand. Many people consider Buddha as avatar. Avatara means somebody who comes again and again and again. So here the Buddha makes it clear that this is the last birth. No more birth. When he was Bodhisattva, yes, as Bodhisattva he was born again and again to fulfill paramis. But when he became Buddha, that was the last birth. So, when this was said, imasming chapanaveya karanasming bhanyamane, when the discourse was delivered, this unsullied and stainless vision of truth arose in the Venerable Kondanya. The 5 monks were there, no? Kondanya, Vappa, Bhaddiya, Mahanama and Assaji, 5 monks. So Kondanya, who was elderly, he got this vision very clear, unsullied, untainted. Yankinchi samudaya dhammang sabbang tang nirodha dhammang. Whatever has the nature to arise, all that has the nature to go away. Whatever is subject to arising, all that is subject to ceasing, going away. So he became Sotapanna. This is the statement of a Sotapanna. So when this Dhammachakra was set in motion, why it is called Dhammachakra? It is like if you are manufacturing a, for example, say if you are manufacturing a car, a vehicle, and when you manufacture it, just manufacturing that vehicle will not make that vehicle as vehicle. You make it and keep it, it will not move even 1 inch. Can you call it vehicle? No. But once you manufacture it and then it starts moving, that is the fulfillment of that vehicle. In the same way, the Buddha's enlightenment under the holy Bodhi tree is one aspect of this Dhamma wheel, Dhamma Chakra. It is like making the Chakra. And in Sarnath, when he taught this first teaching, Now that chakra has started rolling. So that is why this event which took place was not just attended by these 5 monks. Countless devas were there. And along with Kondanya Bhante, 18 crore Brahma devas also became Sotapannas. They also realized Yankinchi Samudaya Dhammang Sabbang Tang Nirodha Dhammang. 18 crores, 180 million people, million devas, not small number. Then immediately the message, it was such great experience for these devas from the lowest to the highest that they exclaimed, "Oh, Pavatite Chapana Bhagavata Dhammachakya." As soon as this Dhammachakra was set in motion, Bhumma Deva Saddamanusavesu, the Bhumma Devas, the lowest level of Devas, they exclaimed, they shouted, they proclaimed. They said, "This incomparable wheel of truth has been set in motion by the Blessed One at the dear sanctuary in Isipatana near Varanasi, which cannot be reversed by anybody in the world, whether a monk or a holy man or a deva or a Mara god or a Brahma divinity. Any force in the world cannot stop this." So this was the proclamation from the lowest deva, and from there to Chatumarajika, Tavatimsa, Yama, Tushita, like that. It goes up to the Bhavagga, the pinnacle of this universal existence, the beings of very, very high level. 31 planes are there, no? So out of that, all these form spheres. So this is how the message that the wheel of Dhamma has been set in motion means the Buddha has arisen and he has taught the Dhamma. This is one of the rarest of rare events that can happen in the entire universe. So that's why whole universe proclaimed and rejoiced in the teaching of the Buddha. So it is said, "Itihatena khanena tena layena tena muhtena." Thus promptly, instantly, and in a flash, this message went forth up to the realms of the Brahma gods. And indeed, this entire universe of 10,000 world systems quaked, trembled, and shook. Yava Brahma Loka Saddo Abuggachi Ayangcha Dasa Sahasi Loka Dhatu Sankampi Sampakampi Sampavedi. Appamano Chaularo Bhaso Loke Paturahosi Atikkamma Devanang Devanubhavang. And lo, a boundless sublime illumination manifested, surpassing the radiance of the gods. That was the event that took place. Then within very short time, the entire universe was reverberating with the message that this Dhamma wheel has been set in motion by the supremely enlightened Buddha. Such was a great occasion. And then seeing all these things, and here sitting in front of the Buddha was Kondanya Bhante, who has become transformed now as Sotapanna. The Buddha says, "Anyasi vatabo kondanyo, anyasi vatabo kondanyo." Then the Blessed One breathed forth this joyous utterance. "Indeed, Kondanya, you have realized. Indeed, Kondanya, you have realized." That's why Kondanya Bhante is called Anya Kondanya, the Kondanya, the wise person. So this is the Dhammacakka Pavattana Sutta, which enumerates many aspects of the Buddha's teachings. So here I would like to conclude, and few minutes we have got. If you have any questions, we can take questions, Pankajji.
Yes, Bhante. Sadhu, 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 Bhante. Thank you very much for the class today, Bhante, the discourse today. Anybody who has any questions, please put it in the chat window. We will try to go through the chat and take the question. Bhante, the first question is related to the goat story that you have told in the discourse, Bhante. People wanted to know the reference for that. Is that something we could share later on with other people, Bhante? Bhante, were you able to hear me, Bhante?
Yeah, I am hearing you. So
Yes,
this is
Bhante, yeah.
this question, when the Buddha lost energy, that is the question?
Yes, Bhante, with the goat story that the milk, the goat gave milk to. So there, the question is that people have heard about the story of Sujata, but can we give references to this particular part of the story?
Yeah, now with present question and also what you are telling about Sujata. No,
Yes,
this
Bhante.
goat, I am telling, this was much before Vaishaka Purnima Day. That this was when he practiced self-torture and when he became unconscious. That is the time that this goat fed him. And then he gained consciousness and then he started eating, and after a few days he recovered. And then on Vaishaka Purnima Day, when he was sitting under that banyan tree, there Sujata Amma comes and offers the kheer. So these are two different incidents on different days. And then somebody has asked if the not eating after 12 o'clock is not a torture. Not at all. Eating is torture. If you eat breakfast or lunch, one very good meal, and then you can live on the liquids, you will see your health is very strong. The people who have practiced 8 precepts, or the monks who have practiced it, they have lived over 100 years. You see, that helps. Eating one meal or 2 meals, morning, breakfast and lunch, is more than enough. And later on you can have nutritious drinks, like fruit juice and such things. So that is not torturing the body. That is keeping the body healthy.
Thank you, Bhante. Bhante, there seems to be some confusion related to the rebirth of Bodhisattva and Buddha. This particular question is asking that after Buddha, will he still take birth as Bodhisattva? So can you please clarify the concept of Bodhisattva and Buddha so that people are clear that Buddha is the last stage of Bodhisattva's existence, and there is no more existence after that as a rebirth.
Yes. You see, when you fulfill the paramis, first you fulfill the paramis at one level, and then you become, you are able to become arahant. If you hear the Dhamma, then you are able to become arahant. And but at that time, when you are able to become arahant, out of compassion, you give up that state, that status, and you make determination to become Samma Sambuddha. Then you start fulfilling your 10 paramis to the second level and to the third level. So when you start this, it is not just your wish and will. You have to meet one Samyak Sambuddha, like our Buddha has met Dipankara Buddha, and he took this blessings and sure confirmation. And then that moment he is called Bodhisattva. So now Bodhisattva takes birth after birth and fulfills the 10 paramis. And in his last birth, he becomes Samma Sambuddha. And once he is Samma Sambuddha and attains to Mahaparinibbana, then he will not be coming back. His Buddha Shasana will remain for certain time, like our Buddha Shasana is 5,000 years. So it will remain on this earth for this time, and then slowly this will also disappear. But the Buddha himself will not come as Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is still unenlightened person, whereas Buddha is fully enlightened person. There is big difference.
Thank you very much. Bante, there is one more question related to the insight search. So this person wanted to know that his insight search is to be defined community conscious as Buddha or the enlightenment. What is the correct answer?
Community conscious means?
Conscious, like I guess what he's trying to say, maybe will he be, if he's doing consciously as a Buddhist community service and trying to get the conscious of the community up for Buddhism or straight up Buddhism, is that his enlightenment, or the insight search he should start would be to attain his own enlightenment? I guess the priority he's asking, what should he do?
It has nothing to do with the community. The attainment of enlightenment, the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, these are real experiences which have transformed the consciousness of Bodhisattva and made him Samyak Sambuddha. But it is the nature of the Samyak Sambuddhas, and it is also the mission of Samyak Sambuddhas. Out of boundless compassion, they take up the teaching of the Dhamma and liberate countless beings from ignorance and craving. So that is natural corollary of that wisdom. So it is, if you say the community aspect, then when he became Bodhisattva, at that time his compassion was overflowing, and that's why he takes up this Bodhisattva practices, and he becomes supremely enlightened Buddha, and as Buddha he teaches.
Can you just clarify a little more about that, and also about the rebirth?
Because, yes, you see, the universe is not small. The universe is infinite. And living beings are not limited. Human beings are not the only living beings. And we see some animals and birds, some beings in the water like fish. So these are not the only beings. We know only so much because the mental capacity, the mental ability is only so much. But the universe is vast. The mental levels are different. Today, we have as human beings certain kind of mind. We behave, eat, live in certain way. And the animals, for example, dogs have certain kinds of mind. They live in certain way. But these are not the only two levels of mind. Mind has different levels. So those levels which are higher than the human levels, with that kind of mind, if there is some living being, what do you call them? You have to give some name, right? You call them higher beings, higher levels of beings, or whatever. So in normal language, from the time of Buddha's time, Pali language, they are called Deva. Deva means what? That which is Divya, that which is illuminating, because their bodies are illuminating. That is why they are called Devas. And you see, uh, Deva or Diva. Diva means daytime. Divas, we call, no? That also come from the same root, illumination. The sun is illuminating, so that's why we called it Divas. And similarly, the beings which are illuminated are called Devas. And when you go still further, the in Pali, we refer to Devas as the lower level of these beings. And as you go into jhana, mental concentration states, then you enter into first jhana. There are levels of beings with that mind. From this first jhana onwards, we call them Brahma Devas. Huh? Uh, because at that level, they have suppressed greed, lust, passion, anger. So they are much more refined. Metta, Karuna, Mudita, and Upekha are the main ingredients of their daily life. So they are called Brahma Devas. And then comes Arupa. These are Rupa Brahmas. Arupa means pure mental existence beings, no matter at all. So like that, there are 31 planes of existence according to Buddhist cosmology. And these are mental levels. And the beings which carry that mind, what do you call them? You can give other names also. Deva or Brahma, or you can call them with other names, higher beings, good beings, noble beings. They also become disciples of the Buddha because they are also born, they live, they die. Again, they are born in lower levels or higher levels, depending on how they develop the mind. And they are also equally caught up in ignorance and craving. The higher level of devas, they are suppressed but not purified, not removed. So once again, when they are in human level, again they become angry, or in when they are in animal level, they become all ignorant and like that. So that is not the solution. To become a deva is not the solution. All those mental states, all those levels, all those divine states, the Buddha saw them on the night of Vaishakha, enlightenment. That was part of his enlightenment. He saw clearly the entire universe, all states of mind, the living beings, all states of living beings and all states of their minds, mental levels. And he saw still there are unenlightened states. Even the highest of high Brahma Deva is also still within the wheel of ignorance and craving and karma and rebirth. So the Buddha discovered this noble eightfold path and he went beyond. That is Nibbana. So this is the explanation.
Thank you very much, Bhante. Bhante, the next question is it more challenging now to achieve self-realization than compared to when Buddha was teaching? Is that's normally the feeling? Is that a true? That it is always difficult?
Is it Is it possible to become enlightened in present day? Is it the same, or is it difficult nowadays compared to Buddha's time? Is it the question?
Yes, Bhante. Yes, on a similar line. Yes, Bhante.
In the Buddha's time, naturally, there used to be more because that is another norm of the nature, Dhamma Niyama. Norm of the nature that whenever a supremely enlightened Buddha arises, the conditions and causes, they come in such a way that all those who are matured are born and they are in the surrounding areas, and the Buddha teaches them and they quickly catch them. For example, Kondanya Bhante, who was the first one to understand had made a, a determination long back in front of one Buddha, and for that he fulfilled the causes and conditions, and now he is the first one to receive the Dhamma and become enlightened. So like that, so many people who have made these aspirations and practice, they used to be born, and or wherever the Buddha used to go to them and teach, and the transformation was fast. The process of transformation is not changed. It is the same thing. It is nothing miracle in those days and difficult nowadays. It's only the matter of fulfilling the causes and conditions. Just like if you have a seed, if you keep that seed on this table, it will not sprout. If you put in a good soil and water it, then next day it will start sprouting. Similarly, we have to create the causes and conditions so that our insights sprout. So nowadays, the practice and the realization is equally possible. Of course, we have less teachers. In those days, lakhs and lakhs of arhant teachers were there. Anagami, Sagadagami, Sotapanna teachers used to be there. Now they are very less, but not empty. Still, they are there. Because of them only, the Buddha Shasana is existing, and the process of enlightenment is also possible. But the distractions, the sense distractions and disturbances are more, we can say surely, in the present world. But if somebody manages that properly, even today it is possible.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you very much, Bhante. I'll take a couple of more questions, Bhante. This particular one is a person wants to know that what is the good aim for a person to keep to get his own enlightenment and work on that, or do his professional work and help others, or just get rid of all.
You see, when you are a family person, you can shape your life in such a way. The Buddha did not tell that that you have to just throw away everything, but convert everything into your path by Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, and Samma Ajiva. So you change your family lifestyle in a noble way, in a good way, and what you do, that you are going to do with more panya and sati panya, mindfulness and wisdom. When you do that with mindfulness and wisdom, in that very circumstance, it is possible to overcome your defilements. For example, one family member abuses you or shouts or doubts or something, and you become unhappy. But now if you have sati and panya, you start observing that. You start understanding, analyzing. So when you start doing that, that situation becomes your ingredient for practice, isn't it? So for that, you need intense, strong sati. That is the thing. Then panya will start coming. So surely if you want to become monk, then monks have one and the only goal, then full-time dedication. So that is also possible, but it depends on you, how you are. If you are already in family life, then you have to fulfill those responsibilities in a proper way. And once the responsibilities are fulfilled, then you can surely become monk. Or if you don't have those family responsibilities, then you can surely become monk straight away. So both are possible. But the Buddha, when he gave this path, Noble Eightfold Path. He did not say, this I am giving for monks or lay people, some another Eightfold Path. No. Noble Eightfold Path is common for all, whether you are monk or nun or upasaka, upasika. So it is up to you how you practice it.
Thank you, Bante. Bante, this question is about previous Buddhas. Did all previous Buddhas taught the same Four Noble Truths? Their teaching is same, and it's just that the teachings gets lost over a period of time. The Buddha Sasanas from those Buddhas end, and then a new Sammasambuddha rediscovers that. Is that the process, Bante?
Yes, all the Sammasambuddhas teach exactly the same Four Noble Truths. In many suttas, the Lord Buddha says, after this, um, um, in the Buddha's teachings, Dana Kata, Sila Kata, step by step, Navanga Buddha Sasana, Dana Kata, Sila Kata, Sagga Kata, and then Kamanang Adinava Kata, Nikkame Anisangsa Kata, like teaching about generosity, morality, about heavens, and then dangers in sensuality and benefits of renunciation. And then it is said, the Buddhas teach the unique teaching of the Buddhas, that is Four Noble Truths. First Noble Truth, second, third, and fourth. So like that, we hear many times about these Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, which is unique to the Buddhas. So all the Buddhas teach the same Dhamma. And as I said, it is lost after a period of time. And again, of long gap, another Buddha arises. They discover, these are discoveries, not inventions, not creations. These are discoveries of the truths which are there, but people don't know. And the Buddha teaches them how to discover and get enlightenment. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bante. Bante, this would be your last question for the day. If somebody is keeping Uposatha during this Vassa period, and assuming he is trying to do that every day, and he is diabetic, so what kind of food he consume after 12? If liquids, then what kind of liquids, things like that?
If you are keeping Uposatha, then after 12, you can take all the liquids like all fruit juices, all kinds of fruit juices or medicinal juices, liquids you can take. You just make it quite filtered, and then you can drink any number of times. And if you are really, really feeling hungry, then there is a thing called Chatu Madhu. Chatu Madhu is 4 ingredients that you have ghee, butter, and honey and jaggery. You can boil them and it becomes a pasty thing that's very, very strong. Just small piece also is more than enough. So like that you can sustain. And if you, now in our monastery, so many, even youngest of our monks who is 8 or 9 years, from that person to everybody, it becomes habit, it becomes just normal. After 12, there is no even thinking about that. Morning breakfast we eat, and at 6:30, 6:45, and lunch at 11:15. So that's it. Then evening tea we take, and in the after puja at 7:30 we take some juice, fruit juices. That's all. Nothing else. That keeps us quite good and strong.
Thank you, Bante. Thank you very much for the discourse and class today, Bante.
I would like to say, first of all, on this holy occasion, salutations to Triple Gem and our teacher, Acharya Buddharakita Banteji, Kasapa Banteji, and to our wonderful Buddha Datta Banteji, who took lot of trouble to organize this with his team. And Pankajji, you are last year also you were there. And in fact, it was with your initiative that this last year we started this course. So we are very grateful to you and Anna, your group, Ambedkar Association of North America. Please convey our best wishes to one and all, and giving this Dhamma light to the whole world is great, meritorious action, meritorious gift that you are doing. May the blessings of Triple Gym, Bada Bhanteji, and all the Sangha be with you all and all participants and the family members. Enjoy. We will see you tomorrow. So I'd say thank you and Namo Buddhaya.
Sadhu, 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 Bhante. Thank you very much, Bhante.
Sadhu, sadhu.